not too like yee bony, but you know, I do like the vibe of just being a little textured and stuff like that. I like the tape and how it makes everything kind of blend into it. But yeah, I don't know. I wanted to try something a little new. I never had like a medium length hairstyle that was actually styled.
Right.
You always just grow it out until it's long,
and then just chop it.
and then it's chopped into something else, like like a middle, or like a side part or something. Grow it out again. So I want something, looking for something more fun.
Cool. I'll take care of you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Let's get it.
Before we even get started with this one, big thank you to the 1,000 subscribers so far. I set out with a goal of 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. We got 99,000 more to go. So if you haven't yet, please smash that subscribe button before we get into this haircut. All right, so Kyle wants to keep the mullet look, but he doesn't want it to be too yeet mullet. I totally get what he means. He wants the mullet look, but not the Joe Dirt look. In other words, he wants the modern mullet. Kyle made it clear that he liked the longer hairstyle. He liked the texture, he liked the flow, but he was willing to give up some length to achieve this hairstyle. He stressed that he really wanted a taper. It's been a while since he had a nice clean taper. So as I begin breaking down this haircut with clean sections, I'm breaking this haircut down, separating the back so that we can tackle our layering problem in the back, because the back is way too heavy and we need to take up some of that length to avoid the yeet mullet look. I'm isolating both side panels so that I can handle my graduation into the clean taper on the side, while also managing the connection and flow from the taper on the side into them long lengths of the back. And of course we isolate the top because that's where the style up top is going to sit, and we are going to have to layer that top. It is way too heavy. Starting with the back, I want to decide my length first, so I drop down a section underneath all of that weight sitting up top. Using my feather razor, I'm going to decide my length and my shape horizontally at the bottom. This is what I would consider the bottom perimeter. Everything from this initial length is going to be where we layer from the entire back. So this initial incision going across the back may not seem like a lot. It may not seem like we're really doing much, but that's because the length was not too bad. It really was not too long. This haircut just had a lot of weight. The haircut wasn't too long, it just wasn't layered properly. So I decided to use the feather razor to just soften up that bottom perimeter and really customize the shape of this layer. And from this initial customized guideline, we will layer the entire back. We're gonna drop the rest of the hair from the back panel down, create one profile section down the middle, and with that profile section, we are going to do our layers throughout the back. Pulling that first initial profile section out, I'm going to find right at the occipital bone where I dropped that first section down. I'll find all of that length sitting on top of my guide at the bottom. Once I find that guide, I'm just going to pull everything out 90 degrees. Following that length, I'm going to create that first initial layer vertically through the back. This is going to dictate my shape vertically. So we have one horizontal guide going through the perimeter at the bottom of the back panel, and now we'll have a guide going vertically from the bottom of the panel all the way to the top of the panel. Here we can dictate what the layers are going to do and how the shape of the entire back is going to look, because we have two guides now, vertically and horizontally throughout the entire back panel. Having a guide both vertically and horizontally will allow us to control the shape horizontally and vertically. Now remember, one thing you want to be mindful of is not to over direct the hair up or down. So as you can see, as I'm pulling my sections out, I'm constantly moving my hand up or down depending on where I'm over directing, fixing that over direction and making sure that I'm just pulling the hair straight off the head 90 degrees. Now what you're gonna do is just repeat these steps to the right and to the left of the back panel. Every time you pull a section, you should pull a little bit of that last section, and as you can see, you'll see your guide. Follow that guide from the bottom up and your entire back panel will be layered beautifully. All right, now for the rest of the back panel, I'm gonna fast forward because it's all the same process. As you can see here, throughout the entire back panel, there is always going to be the bottom guide. So as I get behind the ear here, you can see there's still a guide at the bottom, but there's all that weight that's just laying on top of your length. And that is the objective with layering, just to remove weight but keep the length. Now what you should be left with is the right side. When you comb through, it should be nice and easy, layered. It should all lay nice and neat. And on the left side, you'll see it's just way too heavy and overgrown. Now you're just going to continue to layer the back. You can fast forward through the rest of this back panel if you want, but I left the entire visual for my visual learners. As always, when we finish layering the back panel of any haircut, we're going to want to go through and cross check, making sure there's no hairs that got missed, and really just making sure that we're still on track to accomplish the shape that we want with this haircut. So I'm going to cross check from left to right because we just did all vertical sections, so I want to check horizontally, and then I'm going to check my crown, check to make sure the shape is looking nice, really just making sure the back of his head doesn't look too flat and it's stylable. Now with the back panel 100% complete, we're going to take that guide from the top of the back panel and we're going to run that across the top of the side panel. Now I will say this angle sucks. My shoulder did get in the way of the graduation on this side, so I'm really just going to cut this side out and you'll get a way better visual on the other side. But basically all I'm doing is from the recession point down to the ear, I'm creating a diagonal section going to the back. That's why we call it a diagonal back section. All I'm doing is pulling a section, knuckles to the head, because I know I want to create a nice tight taper. I'm going to make an incision, create that first guideline, and then every section that I take, I'm going to make sure that it's at least the width of my comb, and I'm pulling it down into the previous section, finding my guide, and then making my next incision. And as I work into them longer lengths, I'm just going to continue to pull into my previous section, connect the back into the side, but also elevate at an angle where I can retain as much length going into the back while still maintaining a nice smooth connection. This smooth graduation into the back is going to assure that we have a nice clean modern mullet look without making this mullet look too yeet. Now after completing your graduation on both sides, you should be left with a beautiful foundation for your taper on the sides, and the entire side panel should comb back into the back panel effortlessly with movement without any type of unnecessary disconnection or unnecessary weight. Now the last panel left is the top panel. We made the decision mid-cut that his curtain bangs really weren't too long. They weren't too long to where they were bothering him. He just wanted more texture and more movement. So what I did was I used my feather razor to kind of soften up the ends, take a tiny little bit of length off, but mainly connect that length into the side panel. And how do we do that? By dissecting the top panel right down the middle, pulling everything down into the side panel, finding our side panel guide, and removing that length which connects the top and the side. Once we do that on both sides of the top panel, we're just going to elevate the entire panel up top straight to the ceiling, and we're going to cut straight across to make sure we have a nice square line for the top panel. So what you should be left with is 2 short bits and 1 long bit. And what I mean by that is when you pull the top up, you should see 1 guide on each side, the right and the left, and in the middle you should see long hairs. Cut them long hairs straight across the top all the way to the back, and the top is complete. Now with all my primary shear work absolutely complete, I'm gonna dry the entire head of hair. I never want to start cutting into hair with clippers with the hair wet, and I want to see the exact shape that we've cut into the hair. I want to see how the hair is reacting to the length we've cut it at while it's dry, because as we all know, hair wet does not look the same as when it dries. So any of my refining that I'm going to do with my shears or my feather razor, I'm going to dry everything and then refine. But once everything is finished and refined, I'm gonna then continue into my clipper work. And especially when I'm working with longer hair up top, where I have some type of long fringe, specifically curtain bangs, I always clip my curtain bangs away, because you never wanna run your clippers up the side panel and accidentally take off some of your fringe. Even if you don't notice right away, when you go to style it, you will notice. I'm starting this taper off running a 2 guard up into the foundation that I set with my shears. Any remaining weight left from that, I'm gonna just clipper over comb through the side panel, making sure that everything runs smoothly into the sides and down into my taper. From there, I'm going to set my first fade guide. That's going to be set with a trimmer. This trimmer isn't too sharp so that it's not going to make a very harsh line, but it is going to bald it out. There will be stubbles that I'll have to get rid of with my shaver. So once I have that bald guideline set for my taper and my Italian beard, I'm gonna use my shaver to really bald it out. I'm gonna take my clipper, no guard, I'm gonna open it up and set my second guideline, which is what I consider my fade guideline. This fade guideline, in my opinion, is one of the most important guidelines in a fade. This is where the hair blends in to the skin. This is where the true gradient of one color blends into another color. The two colors in this example would be Kyle's brown hair blending in to Kyle's lighter cream skin. So as I make that second guideline with my clipper open, I'm gonna then close it and knock that bottom guideline out. So now the first guideline I created with my trimmer is completely gone, blended into that fade section. And now all that's left to do is to descend from the 2 guard down into that fade section. So I went from a 2 to a 1.5 closed. As you can see here, I am refining a little bit more with my clipper and comb. It's really just to save time. I could go back and grab the 2 guard and keep going guard to guard, but if you know how to clipper over comb, you can really save a lot of time on these tapers and fades, especially when you're going up into longer lengths. After we have that smoothed out, we can then move into the 1 guard, continue to just blend that line out. Now my taper is starting to look blended, but what I did here was I actually grabbed a smaller comb and I used the smaller comb to clipper over comb in them tighter areas. This is going to be ideal when you're trying to add small details into tight areas of your fade. And then of course, without the comb, I'm adding small details with one of the 2 corners of my blade, just really angling my blade a certain way to split grains within the fade. And with my taper done on the sideburn, now all that's left is to fade that Italian beard. For the beard, it's going to be the same exact steps as the taper. We're gonna knock the entire beard down to a 2 to match the shade of the foundation on the taper. And from there, you're just gonna descend from a 2 to a 1.5, then from a 1.5 to a 1, and then you're gonna bounce back and forth between your 0.5 and no guard, clipper completely open, fading them lines out. So taking your 1.5, you're gonna lighten that line up. Then you're gonna go in with your 1, lighten it up even more, and then bounce between your 0.5 and your clipper with no guard completely open. Now Kyle's hair is pretty spacey, so I really didn't use my 0.5 on here. I just removed the guard, opened the clipper all the way up, really hovering over the dark spots. Having an extremely light hand, I picked through them areas, so I was really bouncing between a 1 and no guard completely open. What I will say to that is if you are a beginner barber, you may really want to use your 0.5 guard. Until you have a very steady, light hand, skipping the 0.5 guard may be something you don't want to do. Now, while I had the 1 guard in hand, I took his mustache down with it. The taper's nice and clean. It's time to throw an outline on this haircut. So using my trimmers, I'm going to create my outline on the jawline, shape up around the ear, and create a nice outline on the C-cup to really make that taper pop. Now, whenever I shape anything up, I want it to look clean, I want it to look sharp, but I want it to be as natural as possible. Hence why my barbershop is called No Pushbacks. So when I'm lining up this C-cup, I want it to look sharp, but when it grows in, I don't want Kyle to have stubbles all along his C-cup, which would indicate a pushback. Remember, there's a fine line between a line that is pushed back to be sharp and a line that is perfectly sharp but natural with no pushbacks. Now I'm gonna time lapse the rest of the lining up of this haircut, but one thing that I want to stress that is important and normally very overlooked when it comes to these modern mullets and brushbacks where you have a nice really sharp taper on the sides that transitions into long lengths in the back is that line up around the ear. That line up around the ear, having a nice crisp lineup around your ear going into them long lengths. It's not easy to obtain at first, especially as a beginner barber. You don't know if you're cutting too much of that hair in the back off. You don't want to cut into all that hair you just layered, but I promise you, line up around the ear, get it nice and clean, and that will make not only the taper pop, but it will also make the transition from your side panel into the back look amazing. It will make it look almost seamless when executed correctly. Now again, for the rest of this haircut, I'm just gonna fast forward through this so you can visually see what I did on the other side, but it is literally the exact same thing. Some people don't straight razor around the ear, and quite frankly, I do not consider you a barber if you cannot use the straight razor around the ear. Yes, it is intimidating, but it is something that a barber must know. The straight razor is something that defines us as a barber. It's something that cosmetologists don't use on the skin. So if you cannot use it around the ear, I just think you have not perfected that part of the craft. When you have a beautiful crisp taper going into a nice flowing modern mullet like this, or any type of brushback, or even any type of mullet where it's going from really short on the sides to really long in the back, that clean lineup around the ear is what really connects both together. And in my opinion, I do believe that barbering and cosmetology should be more intertwined. Here, what we did today was we created a beautiful modern mullet showcasing both precision shear work and some old-fashioned barbering with a clean fade on the taper and the beard. For this haircut, I styled it with some Slick Gorilla clay pomade. Unfortunately, I do not have my own product dropped yet, but look out for that this coming year. Lajishi hair products are on the way. This is my finished look on Kyle. A modern mullet with a clean mid taper descending into an Italian beard. When Kyle came in, he had a mop on the back of his head, and we gave him a complete transformation. I mean, seriously, look at all that hair that we cut off. But you tell me, did we enhance Kyle's look for the better, or did we cook him? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, click that notification bell, and as always, on your way out, smash that subscribe button for me. I'm always dropping new haircut tutorials, and I appreciate you for tuning into this one. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.